This program is brought to you by Bundle, Itar Innovative Technology, Real Root Supplements, Poor Privacy, Moringa's Finest, and MVO 2026. Prepare today.
Are they hypnotized? Am I hypnotized? That question, that one simple question, activated some strange sort of faith healing. Suddenly, I could see. How did I not see this before? There were so many red flags.
And there's a lot of speculation now, and I have to say, this one I'm really leaning towards agreeing with, that the woman who's in prison isn't Ghislaine Maxwell. I've never followed David Icke just because of that, because I thought that's crazy, but now there's a lot of things saying, and it's so hard for men like you and men like me to even consider.
Do you think that Epstein is still alive?
He's still out there. I believe that firmly. The people who are using the Jews, the majority of them aren't even Jewish. They call themselves by convert Jewish, but they're not. Netanyahu is not Jewish, he's Polish. He converted. So it became this holy war of lies.
Does this right derive from religious affiliation or from genetics?
And I would say it's both.
Mike Huckabee, who is the liaison between the United States and Israel, appointed by President Trump, when Tucker asked him some very basic questions. If it's biblical that God said that this particular tribe of Israelites are the chosen people, then wouldn't you have to have that in your blood?
How do we know if the Prime Minister of Israel's ancestors ever lived?
Maybe I could ask you, how do we know they didn't?
Well, it's on the basis of the claim that they did that all kinds of things happen. People are displaced, there's a money flow. It's a big question. A lot hangs on this. Mm-hmm. It's not some theoretical thing like, did my grandparents do this or do that? It's like, no, we have a right to be here because my ancestors were here. Okay, how do we know they were here?
He said, no, because Netanyahu converted. So then Tucker says, well, then you can just convert to be a chosen person? So now think of the madness of that. Did God say anyone who shall convert to this particular religion shall be the chosen ones? No, it was about certain descendants of Abraham. In that case, we can all just say, okay, we've converted, we're all Jewish, so we're all chosen now. War is over.
It now gives me the greatest pleasure to declare the 22nd Commonwealth Games open.
They're satanic. One of their key deities is called Baal, B-A-A-L. This horned creature, they're drinking blood. They're eating flesh. Get out of here. But then you look at the Epstein Files and there's all this talk of jerky. Jerky's a code word for human flesh. And my wake up happened when I stood on the rubble of the World Trade Center and I saw 2,000 men and women knowingly breathing asbestos. We were told it could possibly kill us. No one left. And we all stayed there for the very slight chance of saving one human life. And I said to myself with tears in my eyes, this is who we truly are. When something happens so much bigger than our own stories and identities of what we've been told we are this beautifully generous, brilliantly designed, resilient instrument called humanity. And I believe we're remembering how to get back to that right now. That's why I'm optimistic.
We have a special guest from the US today, Mikki Willis, director and producer of several important films in the last years. For example, Plandemic, who didn't see it? And also 9 months ago, he made a very important work about excess mortality and, of course, vaccine damage. It's called Follow the Silenced. We're going to talk about those movies and also the Epstein Files and the Donald Trump administration. Very important things. Mikki, welcome to our show.
Thank you so much for having me.
There might be some people that say, who is Mikki Willis? Could you help them out?
I'm an independent filmmaker whose life was changed in 2001. I was at the World Trade Center when it was attacked, and I did search and rescue and body recovery for 3 days, and that was a life-changing experience, as you can imagine. And it was enough for me to leave Hollywood and not want anything to do with it and to create my own line of work, which was to do what the media is supposed to do, and that's to tell the truth. And so since that point, we've been building a network of filmmakers that are committed to exposing government corruption and helping those that are being wrongfully persecuted by the government, and getting ahead of some of the false narratives like the COVID-19 pandemic, which we were, I think, the first major warning to the world in May 4th of what was coming and what the pandemic was truly about. And now we stand here today. One of the most common questions I'm getting these days is, how does it feel to be vindicated? To which I always answer, terrible. If I've ever wanted to be wrong ever, it was about the pandemic. But now, unfortunately, we have discovered that everything that we put out through the Plandemic series is 100% accurate. And as a father of 2 young boys, it's very concerning.
Yeah, I have to make a confession to you, Mikki. 9/11 didn't change my worldview at that time in my life. I was in a complete coma. So actually the corona crisis was my big eye-opener and changed my worldview, and also created a lot of distrust in my government and governments worldwide, and also NGOs. But you already started investigating since 9/11, so that must make you a person that was very aware of what was going on during the corona pandemic, so-called Plandemic actually. You had an advantage.
Well, it actually started before 2001. My brother was killed by a medicine called AZT that was given to AIDS patients in the 80s and 90s. And then a month later, my mom was killed by bad cancer treatments. And so losing my brother and my mother all within the same month was a lot to deal with. This was 30 years ago, but it was enough to have me understand. I wasn't a researcher at the time. I wasn't an investigative filmmaker, but it definitely created in me a distrust for the medical system, realizing, today the U.S. medical system is a number 3 killer of the human body. And so when you people need to think about that for a moment. The very system that is supposed to help us and sustain our lives is the medical error is a number 3 killer. And so then you have to ask yourself, why? How is it that these doctors go to school for 4 to 12 years to earn their credentials and then move into a system, they take an oath to do no harm, and then move into a system where they do harm. So it's being aware of that system, having lost my loved ones, and understanding that AZT that killed my brother was administered by Anthony Fauci in the 80s and 90s. And then when I saw him return in 2020, I knew right away that something bad was about to happen. And I couldn't believe, to be quite honest, I couldn't believe that Anthony Fauci was still in the position of power that he was in, knowing what he did in the 80s and 90s, killed hundreds of thousands of innocent people. And yet he's somehow pushed to the front and labeled America's #1 doctor when the man has hasn't treated a patient in decades, and obviously knows, as the inventor, Kary Mullis, the inventor of the PCR test, has always said about Anthony Fauci, he's a pure bureaucrat. He knows nothing about medicine or microscopy or any of the things that he reports to know a lot about. He knows nothing about it. And a lot of people in the medical industry already knew this about him. So it was definitely an eye-opener when he was pushed to the front of the coronavirus task force, and the whole world was told to listen to his advice. And now people see, when we came out with Plandemic, people were very angry with us that we would dare tell the truth, or in their opinion, lie about such an incredible American hero. But today, I think everyone is aware that that man is not to be trusted, and now his history is mainstream, and so people understand now what I saw at the end of, well, really at the beginning of 2020. I knew immediately what was going to happen.
Yeah. We're going to talk about your other movie, Follow the Silence. We're going to talk about the Epstein Files in the Donald Trump administration. But just some more questions about Plandemic, because the name of the documentary, Plandemic, it tells us a little bit about your view on this so-called pandemic, because there are a lot of signals that there was a planning. For example, Event 201 was a rehearsal of what was going on a few months before. Did you find evidence that there was like a plandemic instead of a pandemic?
Absolutely. It's as clear as day. And ironically, the Epstein Files have further proved that. They started speaking about it. Bill Gates and Jeffrey Epstein and other accomplices started discussing this in 2006, how to profit from it, how to get away with it, what they might do, the power they might gain from it. And there are a lot of other things that many people don't know yet, but it's coming out right now, which is Jeffrey Epstein he was on a mission to spread his DNA around the world. And so
what do you mean by that?
Well, they were actually, he had a goal in his Zorro Ranch, which is in New Mexico. His goal was to impregnate 20 women. I don't know yet if it was 20 women a day or what that schedule was, but he wanted to impregnate multiple women with his DNA because he felt that he was so superior that it was a form of eugenics. And he's been involved in eugenics for a long time. One thing we did not put in Plandemic 2, only because it was so covered up, was that Jeffrey Epstein was actually in part working with Bill Gates and Harvard to create a eugenics dating app so they could start putting people together who had the right genes, because they see that a lot of people outside of their bloodline, they see us as, they even call us goyim, right, which is cattle, or they say, oh, it just means non-Jewish people, but no, it doesn't. It means more than that. It's a disposable race of people.
But this is an obvious similarity with the Nazi ambitions.
It's the same exact playbook, and so Jeffrey Epstein wanted to impregnate all these women at his Zorro Ranch. They're calling it a baby farm. He wanted to create a baby farm. And then he had intentions, and he was looking into how that he could mass produce his DNA into certain populations. And so there's a lot of people investigating right now the possibility that he was looking to perhaps inject his DNA into vaccine distribution. And so these people are maniacs. They're absolute maniacs that believe that they are a superior bloodline to the rest of us. And if you really dig into the conspiracy theories, which have all now come true, I think the word conspiracy theory now just means potential truth, is if you look at things like the Georgia Guidestones, and a lot of other of these landmarks where suspicious text was printed, carved into these landmarks, and they often will state that the optimal global population is 500 million. Sometimes they say 1 billion, but the number 500 million comes up a lot. And that is this group of people who assume there's about 500 million of them, and they are the elite bloodlines, and they deserve to live, and the planet is theirs, and we are all just imposters and basically invasive species is what they see us as. This is a real thing that people would not believe. I was onto this years ago, and people just thought it was crazy talk. And now here it is in the files. People are communicating back and forth with Jeffrey Epstein about these very things, about eliminating a big population of the human race so that they can live the way they want to live without having all these, Yuval Harari, the World Economic Forum's science advisor, has called us things like useless eaters, useless breeders, useless breathers. And he said on stage one time, what do we do now that AI is taking over? What do we do with all these useless eaters? And he said, in the disguise of a joke, well, I guess more video games and pharmaceuticals. And so that's part of the agenda, is just keep us distracted. And they've reached a point of a struggle, because we were seen as their slaves, that we were the workforce. And now that AI and robots are becoming the new workforce, now the conundrum is, what do we do with all these people who are just a burden on the system, eating and drinking our resources, clogging up our freeways? And what do we do with these people? And so when you read the Jeffrey Epstein files, you understand they had a plan. And part of that plan was the elimination of a lot of people. And I do believe that the COVID vaccine distribution was the first step in a practice run in how do we inject people with something that is going to shorten their lifespan. And here's one question that a lot of people ask. Well, why wouldn't they just eliminate people, just kill them? And I recently studied a response to that I thought was very fascinating and probably accurate. And they said, because when someone dies suddenly, their estate, their money, whatever they've earned, then gets passed on to their family. When they die slowly, they drain all their wealth back into the system, trying to save their lives, trying to do cancer treatments, trying to heal themselves. And so most people reach the end of their sickness with no money left. And so when you understand that, that's a really cold, sinister perspective. But at this point, understanding truly how cold and sinister these people can be, that possibility is on the table as far as I'm concerned.
Wow, that's really a terrible realization that you're bringing up here. And yeah, I'm almost speechless, but I have to move on with this interview. You mentioned Epstein. He's Jewish. You mentioned Yuval Harari, which is well known from the World Economic Forum. When you say they, are you talking about a Jewish elite? Because when you say that, people call you immediately anti-Semitic. Or are we facing an elite group that has this kind of Jewish background?
Well, I think there's no culture of people that have been more brainwashed and used and manipulated than Jewish people. And so when I talk about this, I'm glad you asked that question. I'm not referring to Jewish people, because I work with a lot of wonderful Jewish people. And so that kind of myopic perspective is the same mistake we've made historically of racists saying black people. Which black people are you talking about? Because I know a lot of fantastic black people that actually live better than a lot of the white people that I know, with real morals, real family values, real faith background. So which black people are we talking about exactly?
Yes, but you mentioned the terminology, the Gojin, which is a Jewish or Hebrew term for the non-Jewish people that they...
Goyim.
So people that they...
Let me explain that. So there are wonderful Jewish people who don't subscribe to Talmudic teachings. So the Talmud, particularly the Babylonian Talmud, which is the one that has really shocking teachings in it. Teachings that say you should be not punished but rewarded for killing a goy, which is a non-Jew. That you should be permitted to rape a goy child up until 9 years old. There's these teachings that are there. They lie and say they're not, but we open the book and read them. They're right there. Then they say, oh, you're misinterpreting it. There's nothing to misinterpret it. That's what it says. And so there's this kind of this darker part of the Talmudic teachings. And then there are people that, might follow the Kabbalah, and some will have a lot of Christians have an issue with that. But I know a lot of people that follow that are really good people, that are very spiritual, that they don't want war. They don't believe in child sacrifice. They don't, there's a different, they're much more, we can coexist with that. Now, the truth of the matter is, when I say Jewish people are some of the most used, and I hope they wake up to this, because we need more than anything right now, the Jewish people need more than anything right now, a great decoupling. They need to decouple themselves in the same way Christians need to decouple themselves. I do a lot of writing these days about Christian dispensationalism. And I'm amazed at how many people don't even know that word, and they're really devout Christians.
Can you
And
explain
they don't
that?
even know who. So dispensations were taught in the Bible, but a man in the late 1800s named John Nelson Darby used the framework of dispensations, which are basically eras of time. And he redefined that structure to suggest that God's word means something different to different people in different eras, just to say it kind of in a layman's term. And then a man named C.I. Scofield in the early 1900s took that framework, funded by Oxford University, and wrote the Scofield Reference Bible, the Scofield Study Bible. And they spent tons of money to make sure that every Western pastor taught from this Bible only. Why? Because that Bible hijacked the Word of God. It changed the definition and the meaning of some very important teachings from Christ and from God. And so one of the things that it did was it changed God's Word, and this will shock people because everyone who saw Ted Cruz in his interview, now infamous interview with Tucker Carlson, saying, well, the Bible commands us that we must love and support, bless Israel. Whoever blesses Israel will be blessed by God. And Tucker says, God was talking about the geopolitical location, the border country of Israel? Yes, that's what Ted Cruz believed it to be. That's dispensationalism. Dispensationalism is the thing that's really pushed all of the doom and gloom, end times, this world is owned by Satan, and we're just lowly sinners that need to just make it through this life and repent, and so we can get to an actually good life. That's dispensationalism, and that is a very dangerous narrative because what it's created is people don't take care of this life now, this environment, this world, because it's the devil's world, right? But so what it also did is it turned the true teachings of Christ, which said those who bless thee, what it ultimately meant was those who accept Christ in their heart, all nations shall be blessed. No Bible says that one geopolitical location with one chosen people will be blessed. None of them say that, but people will swear that it does. The only thing that says it is within the Scofield Reference Bible. So they changed that. So now we have a bunch of Christians who on one hand are following the fact that, or the narrative that God is love, Christ is love, but we need to support war and genocide at the same time because this is part of the prophecy. This is what the Bible says. It's all coming, and so we need to, no matter what Israel does, the state of Israel, whatever it does, we have to support them if we want to get into heaven. That is one of the biggest and most deadly cons that people have ever accepted, that humanity has ever accepted. And so that people are waking up to that right now and realizing that that was all placed in there and that politics has got involved in the Holy Word. And that's a very dangerous, dangerous thing when that happens.
Waar de elite jaarlijks samenkomt in Davo, komen wij samen tijdens MVO. Masterclass voor ondernemers. MVO 2026 Prepare Today. 12 juni 2026 in NBC Congrescentrum Nieuwegein. Met 24 sprekers, 24 submasterclasses, 2400 wakkere ondernemers in de zaal, 48 stands en 6 buitenland oriëntatiereizen. Koop een ticket voor MVO en krijg 24 submasterclasses cadeau. Met €50 vroegboekkorting via mvo2026.nl.
The people who are using the Jews, the majority of them aren't even Jewish. They call themselves by convert Jewish, but they're not. Netanyahu is not Jewish. He's Polish. He converted, right? And so there's the reason that they don't want DNA tests in Israel is because they started to do that, and a lot of people realize I don't have any Semite in my blood. How can I be a chosen person? And then there was other people like some of the Palestinians that were doing tests going, I'm Semitic, so why am I not allowed on the Holy Land if I have more of that in my blood than you do? So it became this holy war of lies And people are waking up to it right now. And I hope the good Jewish people wake up very, very soon to realize just how dirty their government is. And the last thing I want to say on this is, we can, as an American, I can all day long criticize my government. I can talk about how corrupt my government is. I can push against their efforts to lead us all into war. I can criticize the president. But if I criticize a foreign country, in my country, I'm facing total shutdown, total deplatform, demonetization, and maybe even prison. And so they've always said, if you want to know who controls you, just find those who you cannot criticize.
And
so people are waking up to that right now. We've had enough of it.
I assume that's Israel.
Yeah, well, elements of Israel and the leadership of these crazy, the crazy part of the Jeffrey Epstein type of leadership that believe they are the only chosen people, so much that they want to inject their DNA into an elite race. It's those people. And again, a lot of them aren't Jewish, and a lot of them happen to work through Israel, but a lot of them reside in the UK, in France, in Australia, and they're all over the place. And a lot of them here, are in America. And they're not even by blood Jewish people.
So if they're not ethnically Jewish, what binds them together then? What makes them feel that they are the chosen ones? I mean, what is that?
Yeah. Well, if you just saw the very revealing and very confusing interview that Tucker Carlson did with Mike Huckabee, then you understand how they don't even understand it.
So my question is very simple. I'm going to wait patiently for an answer. Does this right derive from religious affiliation or from genetics?
And I would say it's both.
Mike Huckabee, who is the liaison between the United States and Israel, appointed by President Trump, when Tucker asked him some very basic questions of if it's biblical that God said that this particular tribe of Israelites are the chosen people, then wouldn't you have to have that in your blood?
How do we know if the Prime Minister of Israel's ancestors ever lived?
Maybe I could ask you, how do we know they didn't? I mean,
it's on the basis of the claim that they did that all kinds of things happen. People are displaced. There's a money flow. I mean, it's a big question. A lot hangs on this. It's not some theoretical thing like, did my grandparents do this or do that? It's like, no. We have a right to be here because my ancestors were here. Okay, how do we know they were here?
He said, no, because Netanyahu converted. So then Tucker says, well, then you can just convert to be a chosen person? Well, no, yes. They don't know how to answer that because they recognize that a lot of the people who are calling themselves chosen don't have any of that in their blood. But they say by conversion. So now think of the madness of that. Did God say anyone who shall convert to this particular religion shall be the chosen ones? No, it was about certain descendants of Abraham and the grandson Israel. And so they've taken that word Israel, which was a person, and they've applied that to a geopolitical location of country called Israel. It's a magic trick. And so that's the conundrum that they're all facing right now as they try to make sense of a senseless doctrine. You can see Mike Huckabee trying to wrestle with that, like, I've never thought of that before. I guess if you convert to Judaism, then you are the chosen one, but then why would some be prohibited from converting? Who draws the line of who can convert and who can't? In that case, we can all just say, okay, we've converted, we're all Jewish, so we're all chosen now. War is over. Every Palestinian can convert and say the war is over. But they won't allow that because that doesn't make sense either. And so for me, it's not a Jewish thing. It is these people who believe that they are the chosen people, whether they have it in their blood or not, are the ones that are very, very dangerous to the future of all of us.
Wij staan voor een digitale wereld waarin privacy, veiligheid en vrijheid van meningsuiting de norm zijn. Vind jij dat ook belangrijk? Kom dan nu in actie en ontvang gratis de Pro-Privacy Checklist met bijna 100 praktische tips waarmee je vandaag nog je privacy kunt terugpakken. Ga naar proprivacy.io/checklist.
Mikki, you are studying the Epstein Files. You mentioned Epstein himself and Bill Gates. What other important names did you find connected to Epstein related to this strange reproduction project of Epstein himself?
Well, there are a lot of names attached to that, a lot of emails that went out to various people that are all, it's interesting because, you know, once you start looking at who they all have power within academia or medicine or even Nobel Prizes, right? I mean, Jeffrey Epstein, there was a point when Bill Gates was trying to cozy up to Jeffrey Epstein because Bill Gates knew that if he could somehow get awarded a Nobel Prize, it would give him more clout to do more damage around the world. And so when you understand that this man, Jeffrey Epstein, had his fingers, his tentacles, whatever you want to call them, in so many power centers, you got to ask, how did he get there? He doesn't come off, if you see his interviews, he doesn't come off as a highly intelligent, brilliant man. There's nothing that I've heard him say that I go, wow, he's really, really sharp. You know, they say he was really good with money, that he was, you know, he would handle people's money, but he also dealt with, you know, would take total control of like Leslie Wexner, of his, you know, billions of dollars, like total control of his finances. And so what did this man do to earn that kind of trust with some of these powerful people? And so some of that is still being discovered right now. But the bottom line was he held so much power with diplomats and world leaders and with the real people who control our country that they knew that he was a gatekeeper. If they wanted something major done, they wanted an unsafe vaccine passed through and given the rubber stamp of safe and effective, well, they could go through Jeffrey Epstein. He'd make it happen somehow. Or if they wanted to exercise their demonic sexual addictions somehow, that they could receive or accept an invitation to visit one of his many locations. Of the ones we know of is, of course, the Little St. James Island, his penthouse in New York, and his Zorro Ranch in New Mexico, and he had other places as well. And things happen out on yachts, out on the sea where they couldn't be seen as well. And so, this was a blackmail scheme, as people know now, and there's a lot of them. I just was on a recent news report bringing back a subject that was kind of forgotten, which is the Playboy Mansion in Hollywood was also a honeypot, a place where a lot of sexual activity, important, famous men would have sex with multiple women and all kinds of things would happen. And Hugh Hefner had every room in his mansion wired with cameras, and he had DVDs and tapes of all of these famous people. Where are those tapes now? Why was there never an investigation done there? And who are these people? Because they were all some of the usual suspects. Bill Cosby was there, P. Diddy was there, Donald Trump was there, and a lot of people who have since then also been known for doing things, Harvey Weinstein, people like that, all came in and out of those doors. And so there's a lot of these, operations that are happening, and these are kind of the root of the corruption in our countries, because when you can draw a man in by weaponizing the primal desire for sex, and that's a primal God-given desire. There's nothing wrong with it until it's used in a dark way. We are given the impulse to want to procreate, to create life. That's why the appearance of the opposite sex, a nude body, is so alluring, and there's so much addiction to pornography and sexuality, because it's innate and primal within us to want to be with the opposite sex so we can create life. That has been weaponized in such a way and has been turned dark and demented since the 60s and 70s when certain people ushered in hardcore pornography and then offered it for free all over the internet. And now it's a massive addiction that most addiction specialists will say it's harder to beat than heroin in some cases. And so we now have generations of men that are so addicted to looking at hardcore pornography that it's messed them up, that they can't have a proper relationship with a woman because they have images in their head that prevent them from engaging in the sacred sexual act that was meant to have a baby, to create children, to create life. And so all that to say, they've used that to now lure these men into these environments where they were told they're totally safe. No one knows what you're going to do here. We'll leave the phones in your cars, and then they let loose on their sexual addictions, and then they're told later, maybe they're sent in the mail or directly to them somehow, here's you with these 3 women, and this one's underage, by the way. These 2 are underage, and would you like your wife to find out? Would you like the world to find out? And because you're going to end up in prison for 15 years and your whole life is going to be destroyed. Or you can do us some favors and pass some policies and some laws and push for what we want and turn the other way when you actually catch us doing dirty work in America. And that's why we have the corruption that we have today.
Did you find any proof for this mechanism, or is this your assumption that works like that? Because it sounds logical, but is there any proof that they recorded important people having sex with women in these places?
There's tons of proof. There's proof is all over. There's under oath testimony. There are tapes and that people have seen. Some of them are on what they call the dark web. They're there for people to see. There have been admissions from the people who run the honeypot blackmailing operations. They have admitted either because they're having to turn state's evidence because they've been caught and now they have to actually admit the truth so they can get a lighter sentence or be turned free. It's all over the place. There's no question about it at this point. And that's largely what Jeffrey Epstein's whole racket was about, is to bring in, and one of the ways they did it, which people don't understand, there's a lot of people on the list that are innocent because he earned a reputation as this socialite who was highly connected and threw the best parties ever. And so now, quite frankly, probably not at my age now, but a few years ago, if somebody said, that was the pitch to me and said, you want to come at this, we're having a party in Miami, this super wealthy billionaire guy who knows everybody. There's going to be NBA stars there, movie stars, politicians. He just throws the most amazing parties. Women everywhere. And if I was a single man, I'd be like, yeah, absolutely. Let's go. And then you go, some of the parties are normal parties. Some things happen after hours. Some things happen behind closed doors. Or maybe it's just a genuine cocktail party. But during that party, their handlers are spotting, they're having conversations with people. And they have a sixth sense to know this guy will play the game. So they move over and they speak to that NBA star and they say, hey, if you like this party, we're having a really awesome party in St. James on a little island Jeffrey owns next month. Private only. This is between us. Don't mention it. But if you want to come, I can get you on the list. Really? Oh, yeah. All the drugs and women, whatever you want. I mean, it's just wild, fun parties. Okay. And then they go. And this is when it all goes. And then you know that suddenly that person, you can look at their history of what they've said online, and suddenly they shift. And now they believe something else. And now they're literally protecting the very people that they used to, push against. What happened? Well, they were shown the video or whatever they have on them, and they were told, this is what we now own you.
Do you think that Epstein is still alive? I mean, if you're so powerful, why wouldn't you be able to fake your death?
He's alive. Now, I want people to know this. People get mad at me online sometimes because I don't buy into the crazy conspiracy theories immediately. When people say stuff, I never want to be the first to report something. I want to be the most accurate. And so sometimes I'll sit on something for weeks or months, and I'll dig into it until I finally go, all right. And And so when people are like, Jim Carrey, this is the clone, look at him, that's not even him. I look at it, I analyze it, I put side-by-side photos. Everyone's saying the eye color is different. No, it's not. His chin is down, different light source. He had a lot of plastic surgery and Botox. He looks totally different. And yeah, he's aging. His eyebrows look different because they're gray and you don't see them. They're not as defined as before, right? I'll look at these things and I'll come out and say, stop, just stop, because you're making my job different. When everyone is talking about, the earth is flat and all these crazy conspiracy theorists out there jumping on these things, then when I report something that's actually true and accurate, it gets lumped into these crazy conspiracy theories. And so I try to help the people by saying, be careful, move slower, do your homework. Don't just pass these things on. And if you do, pass them on as a question. Don't be so, certain that this is what it is. And so on that note, I looked deeply into the Jeffrey Epstein situation, deeply into the photos of the body that was removed from the cell. And I knew immediately within a month of him supposedly killing himself that was not true. You're exactly right. He had enough money to be relocated, to be put in some kind of a witness protection program, but not your typical program. And he's still operating. He's still out there. I believe that firmly. And it's evident because you see, okay, well, this is, again, we're being asked to believe something so nuts that the two guards that were overseeing his cell happened to fall asleep at the same time. And then there's 2 or 3 minutes missing. They finally released the footage. Here's the footage. And then everyone goes, oh, no one actually went into his cell. Well, watch the time code at the bottom. Watch it carefully. It jumps 3 minutes. Oh, and then if you look way in the back, fuzzy image, there's an orange jumpsuit going up a stairs while everyone else is sleeping, and there's no guards with that. That orange jumpsuit would be a prisoner. Why is a prisoner out alone when everyone else is sleeping and moving by themselves up a staircase, and everyone just lets this go? And so it's clear that something took place, and they ushered him out of there. And there's a lot of speculation now, and I have to say, this one I'm really leaning towards agreeing with, that the woman who's in prison isn't Maxwell, isn't Ghislaine Maxwell. When you put those two photos side by side, there's obvious different. Now, people change, noses get wider. As you get older, stress causes a lot of changes in the body. But that would also make sense that they have some woman who maybe was convicted of something else, and they said, we'll move you to a really elite, facility where you don't have to serve with all these convicted killers and you can have a plush life. And all you have to do is live the rest of your, the next 15 years as Ghislaine Maxwell. I don't know. But in the face of everything that we've learned, particularly since the release of the Epstein Files, at this point, I don't think we should just write things off as impossible anymore, because they've proven that even the most craziest things I heard 20 years ago that I would not believe. They're drinking blood. What? They're eating flesh. Get out of here. But then you look at the Epstein Files, and there's all this talk of jerky. Jerky's a code word for human flesh. And they say the jerky's in the pool warming up. We're now walking the jerky over to Jeffrey Epstein. Has the jerky been analyzed in the lab yet? So-and-so wants 6 ounces of jerky. That was the best jerky party we ever had last night. Okay, what are they talking about? It's weird, if anything. And we know that from the pizza language and all the coded language, grape soda is what they call adrenochrome. I was told about adrenochrome 20 years ago, and I didn't believe it. I didn't want to believe it. Adrenochrome, do you know what that is?
I know what it is, but maybe you can explain it for somebody who doesn't.
Adrenochrome is usually extracted from a child when they're being terrorized. So their blood has adrenaline in it. And they extract it as a child is in a place of total panic. And then they insert that into their own bodies by drinking it, or I believe there's other ways of doing that. And they believe it gives them something close to immortality, youth, and power. And people have a hard time with this, and I get it, because we live in a modern society where it's just hard to believe this happens anymore. But if we just look back in time and understand all the cultures who have done bloodletting and blood sacrificing and child sacrificing and offering up, virgins, to try to create rain for the crops. These crazy ideologies have been happening since the beginning of humanity.
Yeah, but Mikki, if you talk about ancient societies that would do these weird rituals, I can, in my opinion, see that as something of an undeveloped consciousness. But nowadays, with all the knowledge that we have, the consciousness that we have, people drinking blood, eating human meat, they must be sick or from a different species. I don't see how that can be just normal culture. Yeah, and that's what stops most people, and that's what stopped me for a number of years. So I'm with you on 100%, and it's not a normal culture. It is a culture that represents and worships dark idols. So they're satanic. One of their key deities is called Baal, B-A-A-L. Look it up and understand, and then you'll start go down the rabbit hole of B-A-A-L, and you'll see, major parades in Brazil where there's a giant, float, a statue of Baal, and you see all these, statues around America and Europe and all over what no one even asked. This horned creature, it's at the doorway of very important buildings. It's like, what is that? No regular person stops to go, what is that thing? Why does it look so demonic? And why is it here in the public square of a modern world? Well, they're telling you straight out, that's who we worship. And a lot of this stuff, it's all over the UK. A lot of very, very dark worship that happens in the UK, and it's been happening forever. And there's a lot of really, really dirty, dark bloodlines there. And now you mentioned, are they even human? Well, that's a subject that I've not yet embraced fully, but I'm kind of feel intuitively that I'll be on a podcast maybe in 3 years going, I now accept it. The chance that perhaps these things do have an extraterrestrial or non-human, element of their being. There's been a lot of talk about that. When David Icke used to say the lizard people or whatever, it's just like, I've never followed David Icke just because of that, because I thought that's crazy. But now there's a lot of things saying, and it's so hard for men like you and men like me to even consider. But then a lot of these people who have come from these cultures will talk about it and say, yes, this is what we represented, and this is what we worshipped, and this is why we did the blood ceremony. This is the God that we were praying to. They admit it. So I don't even know why I'm having a struggle with it at this point, other than the fact that I just don't want to believe it. Mikki, it's hard to make a shift to your documentary, Follow the Silence. Don't worry, people. If you're listening to this, we're going to end this very positively, because I'm very optimistic about our future, and Are you? I'm very optimistic about our future, and I'm grateful that somehow I chose, that I got to be in this body during this time and this point in human history where these disclosures are happening. It'd be much easier if I was raising my children, say, in the 1950s, much easier, and I'd have less concern as a parent for sure. But there's also something really divine and really beautiful. Maybe we are the chosen ones, Mikki. Well, in a sense, at least chosen to remind people, because this is what it's about, Flavio, is that we have to unlearn. It's time to unlearn. Everything tells us we need to learn more. We need to just soak up. But the study I'm doing right now is all for helping me unlearn the programming that was put in there through society, through my public education, through television, through all the stories that have been told about humanity. And I'm having to unlearn that. Whatever I learned about God, whatever I learned about Jesus, all these things, like, let's strip all this stuff away and come back to remember. And I'm telling you this from I learned. I used to work with a lot of indigenous cultures.
And one day I was allowed to do a sweat lodge with some chiefs. It was a very rare situation where an outsider like me was allowed to enter a meeting among chiefs. And they wanted to know why I was there filming this particular ceremony in Ecuador. And I said, I'm just here to learn. And one of them goes, and I said, what? And he said, you're not here to learn. You need to unlearn what you've learned. You're here to remember what you already knew as a child.
Wow.
And I went, oh, wow, that hit me so hard. Yes. I knew this as a child.
That's a great thing you're bringing up, Mikki, because I think that one of the great benefits of me engaging in this crazy world now is that I have to admit that I am low educated. I didn't have much schooling and I felt very insecure for many years about it. And then later on, I realized this is my blessing. I wasn't conditioned by the system. I had to learn to think for myself and question things. And it gave me so much benefits later on that I understood why it was good not to have so much schooling. So I think it's true what you're saying, that unlearning is very important.
I'm smiling right now because I was literally woke up this morning writing something about that. I was writing to let people know that because I was raised without religion, and first time I'd even seen a Bible, as I described it in this writing, I said was in the bedside drawer of a cheap motel. And I'm grateful for that, because I had to come to understanding what God is on my own. It wasn't delivered to me. It wasn't through a Catholic nun or a Christian pastor or fanatic born-again parents. I rejected it for many, many, many years. And now I understand that part of my mission here on earth is to help people decouple between all these narratives that have been tangled. And so one of the other decoupling that has to happen right now is for lovers of Christ to decouple from the dispensationalist teachings and understand that that's not the true teachings. That's not at all what Christ had in mind. It's quite the opposite. It's anti-Christ. And so, and I am also grateful that I did not stay within formal education. I did not go to college. And I look at a lot of people I'm dealing with right now, particularly over the past 5 years. The room that I'm in right now, this is my interview room. And I have sat across from top doctors that the world knows. And I've had deep discussions with highly, highly intelligent, mostly men, who were struggling to discern what they were seeing with their eyes and what they were hearing with their brain. They have been so indoctrinated with 10, 12, 14 years of medical school, not knowing that most of their education was false. Most of it was funded by Big Pharma so that every solution becomes a pill. That they didn't know that John D. Rockefeller in the early 1900s, because he owned all the oil of America, America's first billionaire, that when it was discovered that you could make pharmaceuticals from petroleum, that he was the man who destroyed natural medicine, called every doctor that was actually trying to heal people a quack, threatened them with prison time or death, took over the AMA, the American Medical Association, and created what is now known as Rockefeller medicine. He birthed Big Pharma. And so the doctors that I've sat with have had such a hard time getting past their indoctrination. And I've asked them before, I said, tell me something. Why did it take you so long to wake up to the pandemic when a farmer saw it immediately? And I've had people like Robert Malone, who created mRNA technology, say, that's a very fascinating question. And I said, why so many average, everyday people went, that doesn't make sense, while top doctors were going, do it. It's safe and effective. Just put it in your bloodstream. We've never done this before. We don't have a long-term study on it because we push this out in weeks, but do it, or you're a bad person. How can a scientist, how can a top doctor be so far from reality because they're indoctrinated. And if you look at Plandemic 2, there's a reason I called it indoctrination, a play on the word indoctrination, because it was my wake up to realize, wow, as I'm interviewing these doctors, they're having a hard time getting past all of the brainwashing, the conditioning, to see the thing that's right in front of them. And like literally, right, this is the glass. They go, what is that? Science tells me it's not a glass, but you're looking at it. Yeah, but science says it's not, so it's not. Wow, but the farmer goes, that's a glass. There's no filters in the way stopping them from seeing what's right in front of their face. And so you're exactly right on the money. Like, good on you for being a rebel and avoiding your traditional education. It's why we're having this conversation right now, and you're helping to wake up the world in your area of the world because you weren't indoctrinated. And so we all have to keep in mind there's more indoctrination to come. Are we going to subscribe to it? Are you going to put your children in a public school where they teach them there's no such thing as a boy or a girl? Are you doing that, parents? Are you willing to sacrifice your child? That's a new way of sacrificing child sacrifice. Just throw them the system, and then when they get home, throw an iPad in their hands and let them learn about sex and love and everything else through the internet. That's what a lot of parents are doing right now. And then they don't understand why their children are 15, 16, 20 years old, and they hate them, and they hate their country, and they hate themselves, and they want to change their body, alter their body physically forever so they can never have children. And that's the psychological war that we face right now. But we are the people that have the opportunity to do something historic that has never happened before. And the mistake that we keep making is we're looking in the past for answers. And when people look in the past, they go, we'll never wake these people up. There'll never be accountability. Look at the history. It's clear right there. This is the way it's going to go. So why even fight, move forward? Because these people are never held accountable and nothing ever changes. They're not taking into consideration that we have tools now that we've never, ever had before. And that one of those major tools is allowing us to communicate right now. So when Mao Zedong corralled a billion people into communism in the 60s in China, they had 2 or 3 state-sponsored television channels that all said the same thing. They weren't allowed to read books from the outside. They could only read Mao Zedong's little red book. And so they had no chance to wake up. No contact to the outside world. And now all of us are connected. All of us are learning. All of us, more importantly, are remembering. And this is the Great Awakening. That's why Plandemic 3 is called the Great Awakening. We all get to participate in the Great Awakening. And so maybe it's not an easy time. Maybe it's a scary time for a lot of people. But I just am so grateful that I believe we're going to cross the threshold together. There's no going back. There's no putting the genie back in the bottle. Once you see, you cannot unsee. The billions of people around this planet who woke up during COVID, like you, who are waking up further because of Epstein Files, waking up further because now they're saying, we just bombed Iran because God told Donald Trump to do that. What? Really? Now we're going to wake up to really what has happened to organized religion. And so maybe we can go back to just believing in God, humbly believing in God, and allowing other people to believe in their God, and understanding it's all the same thing, really. As long as you believe in a higher intelligence and you let that intelligence guide you, then your life moves in a life-supportive direction. The moment you think you are the top of the pyramid and there is nothing out there guiding you, first it poses the question then, how do all the insects and nature and animals, how do they all know what to do? They work just fine together. But it's these humans with free will who've been so manipulated and so brainwashed that we can't even be in a marriage together these days. That we can't even have a long-lasting, loving relationship with our own children because we're letting all this stuff come into clouding our vision of how simple life can be when we lead with love, courage, and we remember who and what we truly are. And my wake up happened when I stood on the rubble of the World Trade Center and I saw 2,000 men and women knowingly breathing asbestos. We were told it could possibly kill us. No one left. And we all stayed there for the very slight chance of saving one human life. And I said to myself with tears in my eyes, this is who we truly are. When something happens so much bigger than our own stories and identities of what we've been told we are this beautifully generous, brilliantly designed, resilient instrument called humanity. And I believe we're remembering how to get back to that right now. That's why I'm optimistic.
Wow, that's really, really, really empowering. Thank you for sharing this insight with us, Mikki. We're running out of time. We actually would like to talk with you about Trump and the administration, but we're going to skip that and do another time. But I just want to hear from you. We're going to broadcast your latest documentary, Follow the Silenced, about vaccine damage. Why should people watch this documentary?
It's a very important documentary, particularly for those who are still having a hard time believing the damage that COVID created in our world. And mostly it's the older generations that are having a hard time because they were really indoctrinated to trust the government. And so, you know, my wife's parents, my dad, you know, they still just, they love me, they love my work, but they just can't see. They've gone to my premieres and they go, great film and everyone loved it, but I don't agree. What don't you agree with exactly? And so when they see Follow the Silenced, they have a harder time writing it off because these are the people who were the very first in line to do the COVID vaccine trials. They were excited to be there. They bought into the whole thing that it's their civic duty. And they showed up and they got in line and they showed their Band-Aids on their shoulders, proud, I did it. And then the next thing you know, they're having seizures. They're in wheelchairs. They still can't walk. They're breathing through tracheotomy holes in their throats. They have, you know, chronic pain all day long. They're suffering. We followed those people for 4.5 years on their healing journey, hoping that the majority of them would find healing. Unfortunately, they didn't. A lot of them are still as sick or even more sick than they were when they were first injured. And some of them have gotten better. And so we want people to know that that's possible. And I don't want to scare people who got the COVID vaccines because what we are certain about is that there were different batches. What we're also certain about is the power of the mind is so intense that if you live in fear that what you have in your blood is going to harm you, it will have more opportunity to harm you. And so if you have to lie to yourself or even just convince yourself that you were one of the lucky ones that got one of the harmless batches, do it. Because your brain has the power to actually heal you. That's one of the many secrets of self-healing that has been destroyed since John D. Rockefeller took over medicine. And so Follow the Silence can be seen at followthesilenced.com or at plandemic.com. Check it out there. It's free. I don't charge for any of my movies. And learn and watch these people's stories because they were fierce. They all wore masks and they all shamed people for hesitating with vaccines. And now they're very sorry about that because they're struggling and some of them have died.
Yeah, and that's why we are going to show your documentary also on our channel with Dutch subtitles for the Dutch audience. And people who are not Dutch can see your documentary with English subtitles or without on your platform. But this Friday, we're going to show it on our channel with the Dutch subtitles for the Dutch audience. Mikki, I'm really happy that I could interview you now, and I would love to see you in person one day in the Netherlands when you are nearby, just like we did with Del Bigtree and all those other great people that we had over at the Battle for Science. I hope to see you, as I said, in person one day. And it was really nice talking to you. Thank you.
Really, really wonderful. And thank you so much for your support and for the brave work that you're doing. And I would really leap at. If I wasn't so busy right now, I'd be right over there with you in person. And as soon as I get a window, I would love to come and meet all you wonderful Dutch people.
Thank you, Mikki Willis.
My key producer, as I told you before the show started, is we call him Dutch Man. He's amazing.
The son of Rick Velderhof. The Dutch people know who that is.
That's right.
Thank you.
The son of. That's exactly right. Thank you so much.
This program is brought to you by Bundle, ITAR Innovative Technology, Real Root Supplements, Poor Privacy, Moringa's Finest, and MVO 2026. Prepare today.